Everyone, welcome to today's session of theCUBE's presentation of the AWS Startup Showcase, new breakthroughs in DevOps, data analytics, cloud management tools, featuring Ascend.io for the data and analytics track. I'm your host, John Furrier with theCUBE. Today we're proud to be joined by Knapp, CEO and founder of Ascend.io, and Jason Robinson, who's the VP of Data Science and Engineering at Steady. Guys, thanks for coming on, and congratulations, Sean, for the continued success. Loves our CUBE conversation, and Jason, nice to meet you.
Great to meet you.
So the session today is really kind of looking at automating analytics workloads, right? So, and Steady is a customer. Sean, talk about the relationship with the customer, Steady. What's the main product? What's the core relationship?
Yeah, it's a really great question. When we work with a lot of companies like Steady, we're working hand in hand with their data engineering teams to help them onboard onto the Ascend platform, build these really powerful data pipelines, fueling their analytics and other workloads, and really helping to ensure that they can be successful at getting more leverage and building faster than ever before. So we tend to partner really closely with each other's teams and really think of them even as extensions of each other's own teams. I watch in Slack oftentimes, and our teams just go back and forth in Slack as if we were all just part of the same company.
It's a really exciting time, Jason, and great to have you on as a person cutting your teeth into this kind of what I call next-gen data as intellectual property. Sean and I chatted on the CUBE conversation previous to this event, where every company is a data company, right? And we've heard that cliche, right, but it's true, right? It's getting more powerful with the edge. You're seeing more diverse data, faster data, small, big, large, medium, all kinds of different aspects and patterns. And it's becoming a workflow kind of intellectual property paradigm for companies. Not so much just the tech, it's the databases. It's the data itself, data in flight, it's moving around, it's got value. What's your take on this trend?
Basically, Steady helps our members, and we have a community of members, earn more income. So we want to help them steady their financial lives. And that's all based on data. So we have a web app. You can go to the iOS store. You can go to the Google Play store. You can download the app. And we have a large number of members, 3 million plus, who are actively using this. And we also have a very exciting new product called Income Passport. And this helps 1099 and mixed wage earners verify their income, which is very important for different government benefits. And then third, we help people with emergency cash grants as well as awards. So all of that is built on a bedrock of data. So if you're using our apps, it's all data powered. So what you were mentioning earlier, from pipelines that are running at real time to anything that's kind of a small data aggregation. We do everything from small to real time and large.
Yeah, you guys are like a multiple-sided marketplace here. You're a fintech app as well as the future of work. And with virtual space happening now, this is becoming, actually encapsulates kind of the critical problems that are people trying to solve right now. You got multiple stakeholders.
That's right.
In the data.
Yes. We absolutely do. So we have our members, but we also, within the company, we have product, we have strategy, we have a growth team, we have operations. So data engineering and data science also work with a data analytics organization. So at Steady, we're very much a data company, and we have a data organization led by our chief data officer. And we have data engineering and data science, which are my teams, but also that business insights and analytics. So a lot of what we're building on the data engineering side is powering those insights and analytics that the business stakeholders use every day to run the organization.
Sean, I want to get your thoughts on this, because we heard from Emily Freeman in the keynote about how there's a revolution in DevOps for premiering her talk around how it's not just one persona anymore. I'm a release engineer, I'm this kind of engineer. You're seeing now all engineering, all developers are developers. You have some specialty, but for the most part, the team makeups are changing. We touched on this in our CUBE conversation. The journey of data is not just the data people, the data folks. It's like they're developers too. So the confluence of data science, data management, developing, is changing the team and cultural makeup of companies. Could you share your thoughts on this dynamic and how it impacts customers?
Absolutely. I think we're finding a similar trend to what we saw a number of years ago when we talked about how software was eating the world and every company was now becoming a software company. And as a result, we saw this proliferation and expansion of what the software roles look like inside of a company, pulled through this entire new era of DevOps. We are finding that same pattern now emerging around data, as not only is every company now a software company, every company is a data company. And data really is that fuel, that oil that fuels the business. And in doing so, we're finding that, as Jason describes, it's pervasive across the team. It is no longer just one team that is creating some insights and reports around operational analytics, or maybe a team over here doing data science or machine learning. It is expansive. And I think the really interesting challenges that start to come with this too are so many data teams are so over capacity. We did a recent study that highlighted that 96% of data teams are at or over capacity. Only 4% had spare capacity. That as a result, the net is being cast even wider to pull in people from even broader and more adjacent domains to all participate in the data future of their organization.
Yeah, and I think I'd love to get you guys react to this conversation I had with Andy Jassy, who's now the CEO of Amazon. But when he was the CEO of AWS last year, I talked with him about how the old guard and new guard are thinking around team formations. And obviously team capacity is growing and challenged when you got the right formula. Right? So that's one thing, right? But what if you don't have the right formula? What if you're in the skills gap problem or team formation side of it, where maybe there was 2 years ago where the mandate came down, oh, we got to build a data team. Even in 2 years, if you're not inquisitive, and this is what Andy and I were talking about, is the thinking and the mindset of that mission and being open to discovering and understanding the changes. Because if you were deciding what your team was 2 or 3 years ago, that might have changed a lot. So team capacity, Sean, to your point, if you got it right, and that's a challenge in and of itself, but what if you don't have it right? What do you guys think about this?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Basically trying to see, gaze into the crystal ball and see what's going to happen in a year, 2 years, even 6 months is quite difficult. And if you don't have it right, you do spend a lot of time because of the technical debt that you've amassed. And we certainly spend quite a bit of time with technical debt for things we wanted to build. So deconvolving that, getting those ETLs to a runnable state, getting performance there, that's what we spend a bit of time on. And yeah, it's something that it's really part of the package.
What do you guys see as the big challenge on teams, the scaling challenge? Okay, formation's one thing, Sean, but okay, getting it right, getting it formed properly, and then scaling it. What are the big things you're seeing?
One of I think the overarching management themes in general is the highest output, the highest performing teams are those where the individual with the context and the idea is able to execute as far and as fast and as efficiently as possible, and removing a lot of those encumbrances. And put a slightly different way, if DevOps was all basically boiled down to how do we help more people write more software faster and safely, data ops would be very similarly, how do we enable more people to do more things with data faster and safely? And to do that, I think the era of these massive multi-year efforts around data are gone. And hopefully in the not too distant future, even these multi-quarter efforts around data are gone. And we get into a much more agile, nimble methodology where smaller initiatives and smaller efforts are possible by more diverse skill sets across the business. And really what we should be doing is leveraging technology and automation to ensure that people are able to be productive and efficient, and that we can trust our data and that systems are automated. And these are problems that technology is good at. And so in many ways, how in the early days, Amazon was described as getting people out of the muck of DevOps. I think we're going to do the same thing around getting people out of the muck of data and get them really focused on the higher level aspects.
Yeah, we're going to get into that complexity, heavy lifting side, muck, and then the heavy lifting and taking away from the customers. But I want to go back to real quick with Jason while we're on this topic. Jason, I was just curious, how much has your team grown in the recent year? and how much could have, should have grown. What's the status, and how has Ascend helped you guys? What's the dynamic there? Because that's their value proposition. So take us through that.
Absolutely. So since the beginning of the year, data engineering has doubled. So we're a lean team. We certainly use the agile mindset and methodologies, but we've gone from, we've essentially doubled. So a lot of that is there's just so much to do, and the capacity problem is certainly there. So we also spend a lot of time figuring out exactly what the right tooling is. And I was mentioning the technical debt. So you have those, there's the big O notation of whatever that involves technical debt. And when you're building new things, you're fixing old things, and then you're trying to maintain everything, that scaling starts to hit hard. So even if we continue to double, I mean, we could easily add more data engineers, and a lot of that is, you know what the hiring cycle is like. A lot of great talent, but it's difficult to make all of those hires. So we do spend quite a bit of time thinking about exactly what tools data engineering is using day to day. And what I mentioned were technologies on the streaming side, all the way to, like the small batch things, but, like something that starts as a small batch can grow and grow and grow and take, say, 15 hours. It's possible. I've seen it. And getting that back down and managing that complexity while not overburdening people who probably don't want to spend all their waking hours building ETLs, maintaining ETLs, putting in monitoring, putting in alerting. That I think is, quite a challenge.
It's so funny because you mentioned 18 hours. You're kind of being, you didn't roll your eyes, but you almost did. But but people want it yesterday. They want it real time. So there's a lot of demand on the minds of the business outcome side of it. So I got to ask you, because this comes up a lot with technical debt, and now we're starting to see that come into the data conversation. And so I'm always curious, is there a different kind of technical debt with data? Because again, data is like software, but it's a little bit more elusive in the sense it's always changing. So what kind of technical debt do you see in the data side that's different than, say, software side?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. So a lot of thinking about your data and structuring your data and how you want to use that data going into a particular project might be different from what happens after stakeholders have new considerations and new products and new items that need to be built. So thinking about how that let's say you have a document store, or you have something that you thought was going to be nice and structured, how that can evolve and support those particular products can essentially, unless you take the time and go through and say, well, let's architect it perfectly so that we can, handle that, you're going to make trade-offs and choices, and essentially that debt builds up. So you start cutting corners, you start changing your normalization, you start essentially taking those implicit schema that then tend to build into big things, big implicit schema. And then of course, with implicit schema, you're going to have a lot of null values. You're going to have a lot of items to deal with. So how do you deal with that? And then you also have the opportunity to create keys and values, and oops, do we take out those keys that were slightly misspelled? So, I could go on for hours, but basically the technical debt certainly is there with, on data. I see a lot of this as just a spectrum of technical debt, because it's all trade-offs that you made to build a product. And the efficiencies start to hit you. So the 15-hour ETL I was mentioning, basically you start with something, and you were building things for stakeholders, and essentially you have so much complex logic within that. So for the transforms that you're doing from, if you're thinking of the bronze, silver, gold kind of framework, going from that bronze to a silver, you may have a massive number of transformations, or just a few, just to lightly dust it. But you could also go to gold with many more transformations. And managing the complexity, managing what you're spending for servers day after day after day, that's another real challenge of that technical debt
Well,
side.
that's a great lead into my next question, Sean. This is the disparate system complexity. Technical debt in software was always kind of the belief was, oh yeah, I'll take some technical debt on and work it off once I get visibility on, say, unit economics or some sort of platform or tool feature, and then you work it off as fast as possible. That was the art and science of technical debt. Jason, what you're saying is that this can be unwieldy pretty quickly. You got state and you got a lot of different intermoving parts. This is a huge issue, Sean. This is where it's, technical debt in the data world is much different architecturally. If you don't get it right, this is a huge, huge issue. Could you illuminate why that is and what you guys are doing to help unify and change some of those conditions?
Yeah, absolutely. When we think about technical debt, and I'll keep drawing some parallels between DevOps and data ops, because I think there's a tremendous number of similarities in these worlds. We used to always have this saying that your tech debt grows linearly across microservices, but exponentially within services. And so you want that right level of architecture and composability, if you will, of your systems, where you can deploy changes, you can test, you can have high degrees of confidence and in the rollouts. And I think the interesting part in the data side, as Jason highlighted, the big O notation for tech debt in the data ecosystem is still fairly exponential or polynomial in nature, as right now we don't have great decomposition of the components. We have different systems. We have a streaming system, we have a databases, we have document stores and so on. But how the whole data pipeline, data engineering part works generally tends to be pretty monolithic in nature. You take your whole data pipeline and you deploy the whole thing, and then you basically just cross your fingers and hopefully it's not 15 hours, but if it is 15 hours, you go to sleep, you wake up the next morning, grab a coffee, and then maybe it worked. And that iteration cycle is really slow. And so when we think about how we can improve these things, right, this is combinations of intelligent systems that do instantaneous schema detection and validation. Excuse me. It's combinations of things that do instantaneous schema detection and validation. It's things like automated lineage and dependency tracking, so you know that when you deploy code, what piece of data it affects. It's things like automated testing on individual parts of your data pipelines to validate that you're getting the expected output that you need. So it's pulling a lot of these same DevOps style principles into the data world, which is really designed to, going back to how do you help more people build more things faster and safely, really rapid iterations for rapid feedback, so you know if there's breaks in the system much earlier on.
Well, I think, Sean, you're onto something really big there, and I think this is something that's emerging pretty quickly in the cloud scale. I call it, 2 point, whatever version we're in, is the systems thinking mindset. Because you mentioned the monolith. That was essentially a silo or subsystem. It was cohesive in its own way, but now it's been monolithic. Now you have a broken down set of decomposed sets of data pieces that have to work together. So Jason, this is the big challenge that everyone, not really people are talking about, I think most these guys are, and you're using them. What are you unifying? Because this is a operating systems thinking. This is not like a database problem. It's a systems problem applied to data where databases are just pieces of it. What's your thoughts?
That's absolutely right. And so Sean touched on composability of ETLs and thinking about reusable components, thinking about pieces that all fit together, because as you're building something as complex as some of these ETLs are, we do think about the platform itself and how that lends to the overarching output. So one thing, being able to actually see the different components of an ETL and blend those in and use the dry principle, don't repeat yourself. So you essentially are able to take pieces that one person built, maybe John builds a couple of our connectors coming in. Sean also has a bunch of transforms, and I just want the stuff out so I can use a lot of what you guys have already built. I think that's key, because a lot of engineering and data engineering is about managing complexity. So taking that complexity and essentially getting it out fast and getting out error-free is where we're going with all of the data products we're building.
What are some of the complexities that you guys have that you're dealing with? Can you be specific and share
Sure.
what these guys are doing to solve that problem for you? This is a big problem everyone's having. I'm seeing that all over the place.
Absolutely. So I could start at a couple of places. So I don't know if you guys are on the 3 Vs, 4 Vs, or 5 Vs, but we have all of those. Okay. And if you go to that 4 or 5 V model, there is the veracity piece, which you have to ask yourself, is it true? Is it accurate? When? So change happens throughout the pipeline. Change can come from webhooks. Change can come from users. You have to make sure that you're managing that complexity. And what we're building, I mentioned that we are paying down a lot of tech debt, but we're also building new products. And one pretty challenging, quite challenging ETL that we're building is something going from a document store to an analytical application. So in that document store, we talked about flexible schema. Basically, you don't really know exactly what you're going to get day to day. And you need to be able to manage that change through the whole process in a way that, that the ultimate business users find value. So that's one of the key applications that we're using right now. And that's one that the team at Ascend and my team are working hand in hand, going through a lot of those challenges. And I also watch the Slack just as Sean does, and it's a very active discussion board. So it is essentially like they're just partnering together. It's fabulous.
And you're seeing kind of value on this too. I mean, in terms of output, what's the business results? Yes, absolutely. So essentially, this is all. So yes, the 5th V, value. Getting to that value is essentially, there are a few pieces to the value. So there's some data products that we're building within that product, and they're data science, data analytics based products that essentially do things with the data that help the user. There's also the question of exactly the usage and those kinds of metrics that people in ops want to understand, as well as our growth team. So we have internal and external stakeholders for that. Jason, this is a great use case, a great customer. Sean, you guys are automating. For the folks watching who are seeing their peer living the dream here and the data journey, as we say, things are happening. What's the message to customers that you guys want to send? Because you guys are really cutting your teeth into a whole nother level of data engineering, data platform, that's really about the systems view and about cloud. What's the pitch, Sean? What should people know about the company?
Absolutely. Well, so one, I'd say even before the pitch, I would encourage people to not accept the status quo. And in particular, in data engineering today, the status quo is an incredibly high degree of pain and discomfort. And I think the important part of why Ascend exists and why we're so helpful for our customers is there is a much more automated future of how we build data products, how we optimize those, and how we can get a larger cohort of builders into the data ecosystem. And that helps us get out of the muck, as we talked about before, and put really advanced technology to work for more people inside of our companies to build these data products, leveraging the latest and greatest technologies to drive increased business value faster.
Jason, what's your assessment of these guys as people are watching might say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna contact them. I need this. How would you talk about Ascend to your peers? Absolutely. So I think just thinking about the whole process has been a great partnership. We started with a POC. I think Ascend likes to start with 3 use cases. I think we came out with 4. And we went through the ones that we really cared about and really wanted to bring value to the company with. So we have roadmaps for some as we're paying down technical debt and transitioning. Others we can go directly to. And I think that thinking about, just like you're saying, John, that systems view
of everything you're building, where that makes sense, you can actually take a lot of that complexity and encapsulate it in a way that that you can essentially manage it all in that platform. So the Ascend platform has the composability piece that we touched on. It also, not only can you compose it, but you can drill into it. And my team is super talented and is going to drill into it. So basically loves to open up each of those data flows, each of the components therein, and has the control there with the combination of Spark SQL, PySpark, SQL, Scala, and so on. And I think that the variety of connections is also quite helpful. So thinking about the dry principle from a systems perspective is extremely useful, because it, dry, you often get that in a code review, right? Yeah, I think you could be a little bit more dry here. Yeah. But you can really do that in the way that you're composing your systems as well.
That's a great point. One quick thing for the folks that they're watching that are trying to figure this out, and a lot of architecture is going on, a lot of people are looking at different solutions. What things have you learned that you could give them a tip like to avoid, like maybe some scar tissue or tips of the trade where you can say, hey, this way, be careful. What's some of the learnings? Could you give a few pointers to folks out there if they're kicking tires on a direction? What's the wrong direction? What's the right direction look like?
Absolutely. I think that thinking through, and I don't know how much time we have, that feels like a few days conversation as far as ways to go wrong. But absolutely, I think that thinking through exactly where you want to be is the key. Otherwise, it's kind of like when you're writing a ticket on Jira. If you don't have clear success criteria, if you don't know where you're going to go, then you'll end up somewhere building something, and it might work. But if you think through of your exact destination that you want to be at, that will drive a lot of the decisions as you think backwards to where you started. And also, I think that, so Sean also mentioned challenging the status quo. I think that you really have to be ready to challenge the status quo at every step of that journey. So if you start with some particular service that you had and its legacy, if it's not, essentially performing what you need, then it's okay to take a step back and say, well, maybe that's not the one. Yeah. So I think that thinking through the system, just like you're saying, John, and also I think that having a visual representation of where you want to go is critical. So hopefully that encapsulates a lot of it. But yes, the destination is key.
Yeah, and having an engineering platform that also unifies the multiple components, and it's agile.
That's right.
It gets you out of the muck and eliminates the undifferentiated heavy lifting. Is a cloud person.
Absolutely.
Sean, wrap it up for us here. What's the bumper sticker for your vision? Share your founding principles of the company.
Absolutely. For us, we started the company as a former and recovering CTO. The last company I founded, we had nearly 60 people on our data team alone, and had invested tremendous amounts of effort over the course of 8 years. And one of the things that I've learned is that over time, innovation comes just as much from deciding what you're no longer going to do as what you're going to do. And focusing heavily around how do you get out of that muck? How do you continue to climb up that technology stack is incredibly important. And so really where we are excited to be part of it and taking the industry is continue to climb higher and higher level. We're building more and more advanced levels of automation and what we call our data awareness into the automated engine of the Ascend platform that takes us across the entire data ecosystem, connecting and automating all data movement. And so we have a very exciting vision for this fabric that's emerging over time.
Awesome. Sean, thank you so much for that insight. Jason, thanks for coming on, customer of Ascend.io, appreciate it. Gentlemen, thank you. This is the track on automating analytic workloads. We're here at the AWS Showcase, Startup Showcase, the hottest companies here at Ascend.io. I'm John Furrier of theCUBE. Thanks for watching.